Good evening and welcome to the 25th episode of Ahargana. I am recording this episode on January 1st, 2024, so wish you all a very happy new year. I am once again back in the Western Ghats. This time I crossed over the Western Ghats, came close to Udupi, and I am just 1 hour away from the Arabian Sea, but a little bit up in the mountains. And I am on the banks, or rather in the middle of the Sita Nadi. Downriver Sita Nadi, there is a temple of Mahishamardini which I come to every year. But this time I realized that if I come a little bit upstream, up into the mountains, not really top of the mountains, but into the jungles of the Western Ghats, it's a beautiful place to make a video for Ahargana. It's about 5:45 in the evening. It's extremely still, extremely sultry because there is no winter in this part of the world. There is no breeze, there is no wind. There are a few birds. I hear one of them is a lesser fish eagle. I can once in a way hear it screaming a little bit like a peacock's call. But other than that, I was not able to spot any birds. It's extremely still and quiet. And it's so quiet that I think I should also speak very quietly during this episode. It's the silence which is predominant here, and the reflection, the water almost acting like a mirror and reflecting the trees behind me. The water is not really green, it's the reflection of the trees which makes the water look so green. Different from the other locations, yet the same. The difference is in the climate and more something about the nature of this place. It is quiet. But we are not here to talk about nature, as you all know. At least not nature on this scale. We are here to talk about nature on a much grander scale. On the scale of the sun and the moon and the nakshatras. In the last episode, we had discussed about Nakshatra Ahoratra and the duration of a Nakshatra Ahoratra, which is slightly shorter than a 24-hour period. So in this episode, I will take you into subdivisions of a Nakshatra Ahoratra. They are very simple really. You take a Nakshatra Ahoratra and divide it into 60 equal parts. Each part is known as a nadi. You take a nadi and split that into 60 equal parts, you get vinadis. Each one is a vinadi. You take a vinadi and split it into 6 equal parts, not 60, and you get something called a prana. Nadi, vinadi, prana, 60, 66 is the divisions according to the Surya Siddhanta. You will see that these divisions, particularly prana, is defined differently in other sources, but I am sticking with the Surya Siddhanta, Nadi, Vinadi and Prana. And that's all. Nadi, Vinadi, Prana, 60, 66, and we are done. We can wind up the topic. But you know, as always in Ahargana, we dig a little bit deeper and we look at the subtleties around these topics. One of the lesser subtleties is actually the fact that Nadi is 1/60th of a day of a Nakshatra Ahoratra, as opposed to the modern clock where an hour is 1/24th of a day. So in other words, I am saying Nadi, Vinadi, Prana looks similar to hours, minutes and seconds, but there are significant differences. The topmost difference being Nadi is about half or less than half of an hour. It closest approximately to 24 minutes, because you have 60 nadis in a day and only 24 hours in a day in the modern clock. Where the 24 came from, and the 24 is further divided into 12 hours AM, 12 hours PM, and for some reason 6 is decided as sunrise and not 12. I have no idea, I have not investigated these. But in our system, in the Hindu system, we have Nadi, Vinadi, Prana, 60, 60, 6 divisions of a Nakshatra Ahoratra. And there is no concept of AM, PM There is something similar to that, I will talk about it in a later episode, but fundamentally it is 60 nadis in a day, and approximately 30 nadis, not approximately 30 nadis, you are getting close to the middle, not close, exactly to the middle of a Nakshatra Ahoratra, not a Savana Ahoratra, that is different. So, this is the first difference between hours and nadi, and the second one is the prana. In fact, I will only hint at it. So, it is 60, 66 nadi, vinadi, prana. Why 6? Why not again 60? And there is astronomy behind that. I am half inclined not to explain that now and leave it as a suspense so that you can see it when I run this Stellarium animation, but I will stay consistent. So, I will tell you why it is 6 and not 60, 60, 60, it is 60, 66. The way it is divided into 6 and not 60, it is because that a prana is a period of time when the entire nakshatra mandala moves by 1 arc minute. What does that mean? Hard to comprehend, but I will show it to you when I do the animation. This time I am not using Stellarium, I am going back to GeoGebra, and I am going to show you these divisions in the form of a clock with a nadi hand, a vinadi hand and a prana hand ticking round and round and round. And then you will understand, and I will explain to you why I said that this prana, one prana is the amount of time it takes for the nakshatra mandala to rotate 1 arc minute, 2 arc minutes, 3 arc minutes, 4 arc minutes, 5 arc minutes, 6 arc minutes, 6 pranas are done and 1 vinadi is done. That is the astronomy behind prana, and I will illustrate it to you and explain it as I roll the animation. The second point is the meaning of the word prana. So, typically the word prana means breath, life, because in Hindu philosophy life is associated with breath. So, you take a breath and you exhale, inhale, exhale, and you will see that if you use this period prana to time your inhalation and an exhalation, 1 prana inhalation, 1 prana exhalation, you will really be taking good deep breaths. It is not exactly pranayama, pranayama is much more complex than this, and there are a lot of techniques in a pranayama, but you are heading towards that if you associate this word prana with this element of time. You take 1 breath, that is 1 prana. You leave that breath, that is another prana. So, there is an association of this small division of time prana with 2 things. One is physiological, your breathing pattern, and the second is astronomical, the entire nakshatra mandala moving 1 arc minute in a prana. In the time you take 1 deep breath, the nakshatra mandala is moving 1 arc minute of circle. I mean, arc minute is not so big, arc minute is really small. But these concepts I will explain to you when I run the animation. It is an animation, but it is not Stellarium, because I am going to show you the clock ticking, and then I will explain to you the nadi hand, vinadi hand and prana hand in the clock. 3 hands, just like in the modern clocks we have today. And finally, I would like to point out one more thing about the terminology. I am using the terms nadi, vinadi and prana, but there are many synonyms for the first 2. For example, nadi is also known as ghati, nadi, nadika, ghati, ghatika, galige and naligai. All of these mean the same thing, 1/60th of a Nakshatra Ahoratra. Similarly, vinadi also is also known as vighati, vighatika. There are these different names, and vinadi is also known as phala, is one more term which is used for vinadi. Prana is just prana, there is the only definition as per the Surya Siddhanta, and this prana which I am talking about is typically not used or referred in most of the other sources. When I say other sources, I am talking about Mahabharata is a source for everything, and you have Manusmriti, you have Srimad Bhagavatam. All of them are sources, they all make references to these time frames, but they are not astronomical treatises. Surya Siddhanta is, and I am staying with the terminology which is used in the Surya Siddhanta. So, I am going to roll the animation now. Take a look. Okay, let's get started. In this episode, we are going to take a look at the subdivisions of a Nakshatra Ahoratra. There are three subdivisions of a Nakshatra Ahoratra. They are known as Nadi, Vinadi and Prana. A Nadi is 1/60th of a Nakshatra Ahoratra. In other words, you take a Nakshatra Ahoratra, divide it into 60 parts. Each part is a Nadi. A Vinadi is 1/60th of a Nadi, which means you take a Nadi and divide that into 60 equal parts. Each part is a Vinadi. And finally, a Prana is 1/6th of a Vinadi. That means you take a Vinadi, divide it into 6 equal parts, not 60, then each part is a Prana. This is the definition of the subdivisions of a Nakshatra Ahoratra, and this Nadi, Vinadi and Prana are used in Hindu timekeeping for keeping time of day. Now down here I am showing you a table where I am translating these durations, Nakshatra Ahoratra, Nadi, Vinadi, Prana, into hours, minutes and seconds. Now it is not necessary I should do this, because in the days when Surya Siddhanta was written, it's quite unlikely that hours, minutes, second was ever used in India. Surya Siddhanta and this Nadi, Vinadi, Prana were defined completely independent of hours, minutes, seconds, but today we are so used to hours, minutes, seconds that we cannot think of time without thinking of hours, minutes, seconds. Our understanding of time completely is tied to hours, minutes and seconds. So I show you a translation. You already know a Nakshatra Ahoratra is 23 hours 56 minutes 4.0905 seconds. A Nadi in terms of hours, minutes, seconds is approximately 24 minutes, but exactly 23 minutes 56.06818 seconds. A Vinadi is approximately 24 seconds. But to be exact, it is 23.93447 seconds. And finally, one Prana is approximately 4 seconds. And to be exact, it is 3.98908 seconds. So there are a lot of fractions here, and that's precisely because these two are never really meant to synchronize with each other. They are independent systems. And because I am translating with some amount of precision, I am showing you all these fractions. But I have shown you in an earlier episode that this Nakshatra Ahoratra is 4 minutes short of 24 hours, and that's very important for the Surya Siddhanta model. It's because it's 4 minutes short, the entire Rashi Mandala sees the sun, moon and all the other planets rotating around the Rashi Mandala. So this slight difference is important in the model. Now, I could stop the animation, the entire episode here, because this is really the definition of the time, but to give you a better feel for these time frames, I am presenting them to you as a clock here. And this clock design is familiar, very familiar to us, except that this small hand, which usually we think of it as our hand, here you think of it as a Nadi hand. The longer hand, you think of it as a Vinadi hand. And finally, there is a separate dial here for Prana. And why did I put a separate dial? Because Nadi and Vinadi both go from 0 to 60, because they are 1/60th of the previous higher time scale, whereas Prana is only 1/6th. So I decided to put a separate dial for Prana so that it stands out. And I'm using a very standard marketing display where you see any watch advertisement in newspapers or magazines, the hour hand and minute hand will be forming this V shape. I am using the same thing here to give you a sense of familiarity. But as you can see from here, these are not identical to hours, minutes, seconds, because one prana is not 1 second. One prana is closer to 4 seconds. So let's actually see this clock ticking. But before I show you the clock ticking, I'm showing here that this is a Hindu stopwatch. I'm not saying Hindu clock. Because if I say it's a clock, then it must be synchronized with real time. That means it must be synchronized with day and night, sunrise and sunset. I'm not doing that at this point in time because day and night, sunrise and sunset, I have to talk about Savana Ahoratra, and that is coming up in the future episodes. I am still with Nakshatra Ahoratra, and I have told you already that Nadi, Vinadi, Prana are more durations. It's that duration we are interested in. Nakshatra Ahoratra is a duration, not really as rising of a star, setting of a star. No, it doesn't matter. And since we are measuring durations, stopwatch is a better term. Correct? Stopwatch, you just start it running and it starts measuring duration. And you stop it, it says, okay, 10 minutes elapsed, 15 minutes elapsed, 5 minutes elapsed. It will tell you what duration elapsed. So think of this as a stopwatch. I'm going to first reset the stopwatch. There. Now the stopwatch is reset, ready to do its job of measuring duration. And I'm going to start it running. And then we will talk as it's running. So the stopwatch is ticking. And obviously the prana hand is ticking first. And the prana hand is ticking much, much slower than a second hand because one prana is almost 4 seconds. And that's what is happening here. And once that goes through a full round, then the Vinaadi hand makes one move, one tick. So here I'm showing you in digital form, the duration which it's measured right now is 0 nadis, 1 Vinaadi, 3 prana, 4 prana, 5 prana. Now it's 0 nadi, 2 Vinaadi, 0 prana, 1 prana, and it keeps ticking like that. So this is the time frames which ancient Indians used in their daily timekeeping. Now, did they have instruments to measure these time frames? There was an instrument to measure nadi. It was a water clock and it's basically 2 pots. The one is a big pot full of water, second one is a smaller pot empty but with a hole in the bottom. So you just place the smaller pot in the water and the bigger pot, it will start sinking slowly as the water seeps into it from below through the hole. And its dimensions are such that it will completely sink when this time frame elapses. And then one nadi is over, somebody has to manually intervene, pull that up, empty the smaller pot, put it back on. Very elementary, but I don't know if they had instruments for measuring Vinadi and Prana. But you have in front of you an instrument which is measuring Nadi, Vinadi, Prana. Now I must admit that I am not getting Swiss accuracy in this. This is GeoGebra, this is a geometry software, this is not really a timekeeping software. So it does animate this needle, but I am not able to exactly get it to animate 3.98908 seconds. I'm not even able to get it to animate exactly 4 seconds. It's probably slightly faster, slightly slower, but it gives you an idea as to how time was measured in ancient time, not in the current seconds, but in prana. So now the time since I started this animation is 0 nadi, 6 vinadi, 5 prana. 6 prana is actually 0 prana. It takes a little bit of time to switch to 0, and then 1 prana, 2 prana, 3 prana, etc. It keeps going on and on and on. Now comes the question, why is this called prana? What is the purpose of calling this prana? Now, Surya Siddhanta doesn't explain why this is called prana, but we all know that prana means life in Sanskrit. Prana also means breath. Prana vayu is oxygen because you breathe oxygen, and prana is breath. Now, breath, of course, is composed of two parts, inhalation and exhalation. So, purely speculating, going by the fact that this duration is called prana, so is there some way we can associate it with breathing? There definitely is. So, the way I would associate this with breathing is that each prana is an inhalation or an exhalation. That's not a definition, but that is a way to regulate your breathing. So, I'm going to illustrate that now. Let's wait till the prana hand comes back to 6, and then I will start doing inhale, exhale, and maybe you could also try it starting now. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, inhale, exhale. If you follow this pattern, then you will find that you are actually filling your lungs and emptying it with every breath. The clock is still ticking, and as you listen to me, you can try practicing this. But you will indeed be taking much deeper breaths than you normally take today if you regulate your breathing to this prana duration. In other words, you take approximately 4 seconds to breathe in, 4 seconds to breathe out, 4 seconds to breathe in, 4 seconds to breathe out. You will truly be filling your lungs and emptying it. And this is taking you in the fundamental direction of pranayama. Now, strictly speaking, in Ashtanga Yoga, pranayama is much more than breathing. It is about kumbhaka, it is about cessation of breathing. But in practice, pranayama is all about deep breathing. There are many, many techniques in pranayama, but this is very fundamental, saying start breathing well. Don't waste your lung power and start breathing well. You will start breathing well if you regulate your breathing to the cadence of this prana, this small hand which is going around and around here. Now, once again, I repeat, Surya Siddhanta does not explain all this. It just says a prana is 1/6 of a vinadi and it stops there. And this is only a speculation, and many scholars have come to the same conclusion that prana probably was, that word prana is probably used because they are associating it with breath. So here, a clock is being associated with your physiology, with your physical action of breathing in and breathing out, which is an interesting thing. There is no such concept in the hours, minutes, seconds calendar. So the clock is still ticking, and we have reached 0 nadi, 18 vinadi, 2 prana, 3 prana, etc., etc. So you get, but this is still at 0 nadi. If you want to see this going to 1 nadi, you will have to wait for 23 minutes, 56.0681 seconds. But instead of waiting for such a long time, let me see if I can manipulate these hands. Let me pause the animation. I have some controls here. So let me set this watch to 59. Let's keep it at 58 and start it ticking again. Let it go through the pranas. 58.4, 58.5, 58, 59, 0, 58.6 is nothing but 59, 0, 59, 1. Now we are nearing the point where the nadi hand has to tick once. I just want to show you that the nadi hand is not idle, that also will tick. Now, there, nadi hand also came to, one nadi has elapsed now. And it will continue going on and on and on. So this is the physiological interpretation of this term prana, why this term was used. But that is not the only interesting point about this calendar, that there is a physiological association with the basic time unit. There is another astronomical association to this prana. It's a little bit more complex to explain, but let me attempt that now. So I'm going to show you a little bit more information in another window here. So you know that the Nakshatra mandala, where all the stars are, is fundamentally it is a circle. So it is 360-degree movement. If you want anything to traverse that Nakshatra mandala, 360 degrees. Or as per the Surya Siddhanta model, the Nakshatra mandala itself is rotating, which means, let's say Chitra Nakshatra rises, it goes up, 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 then it sets in the west and then goes down, 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 and again comes back and rises in the east. Chitra Nakshatra would traverse 360 degrees. Convert that into minutes by multiplying it by 30. Arc minutes. Not hours, minutes, seconds, but degrees, minutes, seconds. And that works out to 21,600 minutes. Good. Now come to the next part. You know the time, Nakshatra Ahoratra, the time taken for Chitra Nakshatra to complete one rotation, or any Nakshatra to complete that one rotation, is 60 nadis. This is by definition of nadi. Now convert that into vinadi, 60 times 60. Convert that into prana, 60 into 60 into 6. That also works out to 21,600 prana. What does this mean? 21,600 arc minutes, 21,600 prana. Both same number. Units are different. So what do these two sentences mean? These two equations really mean astronomically. What these mean is that one prana is the time taken by the Nakshatra mandala to traverse 1 minute of arc. This is a definition. An alternate definition of prana, working bottom up astronomically. One prana is the time taken by the entire Nakshatra mandala to traverse 1 minute of arc, 1 arc minute. Any nakshatra you take, Chitra, Jyeshta, Ashada, Ardhra, doesn't matter. One prana is the time that nakshatra, any nakshatra will take to move 1 arc minute. It's a very small movement, but that is prana. So the first definition I gave you of all these time frames, I started from Nakshatra Ahoratra and worked downwards to define prana. And Nakshatra Ahoratra is defined astronomically, based on star rising and coming back to the same point, or based on wherever a star is, it comes back to the same point. That was the previous episode. But here I am defining prana bottom up, saying this is the time taken by the Nakshatra mandala and hence by any nakshatra in the Nakshatra mandala to move 1 arc minute. If you are geometrically minded and mathematically minded, you will understand this. But in stellarium or in Ahargana, I always try to visually show you these movements and these concepts. So now I'm going to switch over to a stellarium animation and try and actually show you what this really means. We are now back in our very familiar stellarium, and this particular view also you have seen in the previous episode. We are in Bangalore. This is the horizon in Bangalore facing north. Here is Dhruva. And instead of showing Chitra Nakshatra rising in the east, I am showing you now Chitra Nakshatra right over your head, right overhead. Right overhead means Chitra Nakshatra is on the local meridian. The local meridian is the celestial equivalent of the geographic longitude. Now, why am I doing this? Why am I showing Chitra on the local meridian? I adjusted the time until Chitra came onto the meridian. The reason I am doing this is because I want this coordinates called HA/dec, hour angle/declination, the hour angle component, I want it to become 0. Because this hour angle measures how much a star has moved on its orbit around the Earth, apparent orbit around the Earth. And when a star is on the meridian, the hour angle is 0. And when it starts setting in the west, the hour angle starts increasing because it's moving away. So the meridian acts as a axis, as the starting point. So it's at 0 hours, 0 minutes. It should be 0 seconds, but it is 0.04 seconds because, as I have pointed out earlier, I need to control fractions of seconds if I have to get this to exact 0. And stellarium does not allow me to control fractions of seconds. So I will live with this. And I will also point out this is 0 hours, 0 minutes, 0 seconds, not degrees, minutes, seconds, but hours, minutes, seconds. But if you wait a little bit longer, I will translate that into degrees, minutes, and seconds and show you. So here is Chitra, and I want to now examine how much Chitra moves in one prana. Now, one prana is 4 seconds, almost 4 seconds, a little bit short. So let me advance the time manually by 4 seconds. So from 29 seconds, I will move it 1, 2, 3, 4. Did you see any movement on Chitra? Nothing was visible. So keep your eye on Chitra. I'm going to move this by another 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Still, you can't see any movement. Another 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Still no movement. You can't see any movement. But if you look at the hour angle, it was 0 hours, 0 minutes, 0.04 seconds. Now that has gone to 12.07 seconds. So Chitra is moving, but the movement is not visible to us because we have zoomed out a lot so that we can see east, west, everything, lot of sky. So I need to zoom in to see these small movements of Chitra. So let me zoom in now. Good. And I brought the time back to where it started. So Chitra is on the back on the meridian. And I have zoomed in, and you see that this is the time, and the hour angle is 0 degrees, 0 minutes, 0.57 seconds. So instead of hours, minutes, seconds, I translated that into degrees, minutes, seconds. So this is where we are starting. Now I am going to advance time by one prana, which is 4 seconds. Now you can see the clear movement of Chitra. And how much did it move? Because now it has reached 0 degrees, 1 minute, 0.74 seconds. I did a subtraction programmatically, and it has moved 0 degrees, 1 minute, and 0.16 seconds. So it has moved a little bit more than 1 minute of arc in 4 seconds. But you know that prana is slightly less than 4 seconds. So the argument is that in one prana, Chitra moves by 1 arc minute. And because stellarium does not allow me to control fractions of seconds, I have to go to 4 seconds. It's moved a little bit more, beyond 1 arc second. Let's see this once more. Another 4 seconds I am moving. Again, you can see the movement of Chitra. And there, 4 seconds later, it has moved to 0 degrees, 2 minutes 0.9 seconds, and once again it's actually moved by 1 arc minute and a little bit more. So every prana chitra is moving by 1 arc minute. There you go, again 1 arc minute and a little bit more. Let's do it once again. You can see the movement of chitra, and it has moved by 1 arc minute. So each one, this is 1 prana, 2 prana, 3 prana, 4 prana. Let's continue. That is 5 prana. It's again moved 1 arc minute. And this is 6 prana completed. It moved another 1 arc minute. So in 6 prana, it moved 6 arc minutes. And a little bit more because I cannot control fractions of seconds. So 6 prana is not exactly 24 seconds. It's less than 24 seconds. So this is basically 1 vinadi. So the basic idea I'm showing you is the way prana has been designed is such that for every prana, the nakshatra mandala, the entire nakshatra mandala is moving 1 arc second. In this case, I am showing you one of the nakshatras in the nakshatra mandala, Chitra nakshatra, and it's moved 1 arc second, 1 arc second, 1 arc second for every prana. Now think about it. We have also said that a prana, the meaning of prana is breath. So when you inhale for 1 prana, the nakshatra mandala has rotated by 1 arc second. Then when you exhale in the next prana, the nakshatra mandala is rotated another arc second. So when you are breathing in and breathing out, if you are regulating your breath to this prana, you should also be aware that as you breathe in and breathe out, the nakshatra mandala is moving 1 arc second, 2 arc second, 3 arc second, 4 arc second in synchronicity with your breathing. This is how astronomers have defined this unit, time unit called prana. From physiology, your breathing, to astronomy, the movement of the nakshatra mandala. So that brings me to the end of this episode. When I realized these connections between physiology and astronomy, between breathing and the movement of the nakshatra mandala, I was absolutely fascinated. And I hope you too are equally fascinated by what has been defined by our ancestors in this time scale. Now, prana is an astronomical definition. There is another definition called vipala, which is 1/60th of a vinadi. And also there are more smaller time frames below prana, vipala, etc. Minute, similar to nanoseconds, etc. But Surya Siddhanta stops with prana, and this is how the Surya Siddhanta defines prana. So let me close this episode here. Thank you very much for watching. So now you know all that is to know about Nadi, Vinadi and Prana, which are the subdivisions of a Nakshatra Ahoratra. So with this we close Nakshatra Ahoratra, and in the next episode we will move on to Savana Ahoratra. That is the regular sunrise, sunset and the next sunrise. From sunrise to the next sunrise is one Savana Ahoratra, and we will go into details of Savana Ahoratra, and you would be surprised that there are a lot of details when it comes to Savana Ahoratra. The fundamental one being the duration is not fixed. It is not 24 hours day after day after day. No, it varies. And the 24 hours is a mean solar day across an entire solar year. Every day it's a little bit more or a little bit less than 24 hours. And that leads to some complications, and that is what we will discuss in the subsequent episodes. So, as always, thank you very much for watching this episode. Thank you very much for staying with the Ahargana for 25 episodes. And if you liked this series, if you have stayed with this series for such a long time, then please tell others that there exists such a channel called Ahargana, which explains the astronomy behind the Hindu calendar, because this, I believe, is our tradition, and this is a tradition which we should reclaim. We have forgotten this astronomy, we have forgotten this calendar, and it is good for us Hindus to understand this astronomy and then appreciate it, rather than simply say that everything our ancestors did is fantastic and great without any understanding. Because if you understand, comes genuine appreciation for what our ancestors did. So, once again, thank you very much for watching. So, I will close this episode here, and until I see you again next time, take care and bye bye.